let's start with the field staff and I'll kind of break it down further. Um, who here? Just raise your hand. Who here is paying your technicians hourly? Raise your hand. Got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We got quite a few. And everybody else is doing pay performance or a hybrid model, correct? Give me a head shake, yes. Okay. So, pay performance for service technician for your field staff. I would heavily recommend switching to a pay performance model. The reason you want to switch to a pay for performance model is just this simple. How they're paid is directly aligned with what you're asking them to do. Which, by the way, is not to sell something. It's to be thorough and bring up options, to talk about things, just to open their mouth more or less. We all get this, yes? Now, the key to this is technicians don't like pay per performance because they feel like it's selling. And you have to go through that story and tell a story how I'm not asking to sell. Sell's a dirty word to a technician. They like fixing things. I'm just asking them to be thorough and do their job. Now, I do this two ways, right? Number one, I tell the story of the two mechanic, which is a great story to tell, and I'll give that to you here in a sec. And number two, I help them understand how the pay is different and how a pay plan doesn't affect. Do you guys shoot in the chat? Do you want me to explain how to roll out a pay performance plan or the details of it or both? Real quick. Both. All right. So how to roll out a pay performance plan. So number one, the two mechanics. I think car mechanics are always a great segue for our industry because they are similar industries. Like no one really wants to do business with them. We're really being honest. No one really trusts them, right? And they get a bad name from a few bad players, right? So car mechanics are a perfect example. So I'll say, I live in Arizona. Now, let's say I'm driving to LA for the weekend. I'll tell my technicians this. And I know I'm due for an oil change. I go into mechanic number one, and I go in, he changes my oil, I'm out within 15 minutes. That's a great mechanic, right? Of course it is, yeah. He did exactly what I was supposed to do. Now imagine I'm in the exact same situation. I'm driving all the way to California, which is a 10-hour drive to LA. And I go to get my oil changed, and that mechanic does the oil change just like I asked. But he also looks at the rest of the vehicle. He sees that my tires are balding, my brake pads are low. And he presents the option to me. He doesn't sell me. He says, hey, if it were me, I would go ahead and get those replaced at the same time. And I decide to replace those tires and replace those brake pads. Now, if I'm driving to LA and I get a flat tire in the middle of the road, or my brakes don't work when I'm going down a hill, which is the better mechanic?
Two.
It's the second mechanic. But if we're really being honest, isn't the second mechanic the best mechanic in all situations? He didn't sell me. He didn't push me. He didn't drive me. All he did is he was thorough. He looked at the entire car and told me what was happening. I'm not asking you to sell. I'm asking you to be thorough and present options. So that's step one, is to get them to understand that you're not trying to get them to sell. You're trying to get them to be thorough, which, by the way, is all you're trying to do. I don't try to force my technicians to sell. It's a dirty word. I never say sell in front of technicians. Number two, I need to help them understand, because one of the most common complaints, and you guys have heard it, and you may tell me this, right? We don't do a pay per performance because it makes technicians dishonest. And that's bullshit. That's straight up fucking lie. If I were to pay you on pay performance compared to hourly, would you all of a sudden start selling things to customers they don't need, don't want, doesn't help them? Start taking advantage of customers, ripping them off? No, of course not. Now, why is that? It's because you're an honest person. Your pay plan does not make you an honest or dishonest person, period. There are people that cheat you on hourly by taking longer than they say, marking up the hours, they're driving around, they're screwing around. That's stealing, by the way. Same thing, right? There's people that are going to cheat people on commission, right? And it has nothing to do with their pay plan. It has to do with what kind of person they are. So just be aware. And it's a great thing to do when someone says it, to call them out directly. Say, like, Now, if I pay you for being thorough and looking at the whole system, presenting options, are you going to start selling things that they don't need or want or isn't relevant to them? They're going to say no, of course. And you say, why is that? Because I'm an honest person. Well, your pay plan doesn't change that, does it? Does everybody understand that? Because that's one of the most common pushbacks. Now, the other pushback is anytime you mess with someone's pay, legitimately, you could give someone a raise and some people will fight you. You get this? We all agree? Anytime you mess with someone's pay, it's a nightmare. It just is. It is what it is. So what I recommend is doing and pay attention to the wording because it's important. Whenever I roll out a pay performance plan, I'm going to say, hey, we're going to do a 90-day test. Test being a key word. For the next 90 days, we're going to look at how you're paid now and how we're going to pay on a pay performance plan. Here's how the pay performance plan will work. We're going to pay you 20% of the total ticket, and some things will be spiffable. Here's a list of accessories and spiff that we'll give you guys, right? And the rest is 20%. It's clean cut. They don't have to think about it in front of a customer. Simple, right? Some of you are in areas where it's super hyper competitive. You might have to pay 25%, but no more than that. Now, what I'm going to say is for the next 90 days, I pay you every other week or every week, whatever it is for you. We're going to pull you into the office for a 15-minute conversation, and we're going to look at how much you're going to make on the current pay plan and how much you would make on pay performance. Whichever's higher, that's the one I'm going to pay you. So I've taken away all the sting and risk to this. Everybody following? Yes? Now, when I take away all the sting and risk, by the way, does it take 90 days for a good technician to switch to pay performance? No. No, they're gonna switch pretty easily because if they're any good, they're gonna make significantly more money, which protects you and encourages them to be more thorough and present more options, right? Now, at the end of this 90 days, if anyone wants to stay on hourly, I'm not going to force anyone to switch from the current pay plan. But just know if we decide as a team that we're going to do pay performance, anyone new is going to automatically be on that pay performance plan. So I've taken all the sting and effort out of it, right? No one fights with that. No one fights with extra money where they don't have to do anything. That's how you roll out a pay performance plan with technicians. It's simple, it's clean, and you take away the pain points. Yes?
Yeah. Josh, we have two questions, Josh.
Yeah.
When you have two-person teams with one lead and one assistant, how does that split break down?
So for like an install, or what do you mean by assistant? Justin, unmute yourself real quick.
Sorry about that. Yeah, thanks. So we're not an HVAC company. We do air duct cleaning.
Yes.
So each one of our trucks is a two-person team. We have a lead who, of course, gets a higher pay, and then we have an assistant that helps with our access, cutting, dragging hoses, so on and so forth. So the person that deals with the customer and would be presenting options in these situations, which for us would be IAQ products, attic insulation, so on and so forth. There's one point of contact, and then we have the assistant. So How does that work with the two-person team?
For simplicity, you could do this a bunch of different ways. You can give them percentage of both. I wouldn't do that though. I would keep it simple, right? Simple is scalable. So what I would do is that lead technician is on a pay performance, and then the assistant or the helper is on an hourly rate. Now I want that pay performance to be pretty aggressive because I don't want that guy to stay an assistant, right? So he essentially gives himself an immediate raise, which we all do the moment he goes out of that, right? But I don't necessarily need him to be presenting options and being thorough. That's not necessarily his job, but he'll learn to do that by watching, right? So I would keep it simple and just pay that helper an hourly.
Got it. Thank you.
So
doing a combination.
Question from Joey. Hopefully that was helpful, Justin. And book that call if you want even more clarity.
Sure.
When you pay 20%, do you take out for apprentice pay and materials, Joey?
Nope. So a lot of people do this, right? Where they pay based off gross sales, right? So after the costs come out, there's some significant problems with this. The biggest one is I need them to know how much they're going to get paid on every single job. And they don't know that if you're pulling out the cost of materials, the apprentice, all this other crap, right? Finance fees, whatever, right? And if they don't know, then the dollar amount doesn't motivate them. So what you need to do instead is build this into your pricing structure where you're okay anyway, right? If this is a concern of yours, it means that you're not priced properly. Does that make sense? Everybody
Josh,
follow? Go ahead.
you're talking about install versus service though right now.
This is service really. So you don't pay
Well-
20% for, I mean, an installer could sell, right? And these should be selling and, selling a surge protector, a condensate safety switch, some additional
Uh-huh.
add-ons and accessories, but it's
Right.
not for a salesperson.
Right. No, but I'm saying, so you're talking about service, and I think a lot of guys are talking about helpers being like an install.
Yeah, install is totally different. If we're going into install, I'll talk to you how to do that too. Install, generally, they're not selling anything themselves. I mean, they
Okay.
will sell some accessories and upsells, but I would generally pay them piece rate, which is that because a service tech, I want them to be thorough and open their mouth and have conversations, create an experience. An installer, I want them to create an experience, but I really want them to be quick and not make mistakes. Right? The goal of it's totally different. Does that make sense? Yes. So service techs. Does anybody have questions on service techs? Ignore because I know not everybody's here. It's your service field staff, right? Which also applies to plumbers and electricians and all that fun stuff, right? I don't take out the use of a subcontractor. None of that, right? I build that into my price so I can pay effectively. I cannot describe this if they do not know how, and so many companies do this, right? They have this complicated pay plan that they think is going to motivate their team, but if they don't know exactly how much they make without a lot of thought, they, number one, will do the math in their head in front of a customer, which isn't a good look. Number two, it won't really motivate them. It has to be so simple they understand right away. That's why I pay the straight 20%. I don't claw back things because it's just going to become messy. Does that make sense?
All right. So, question from hopefully that answered your question. Do you take out? So, question from Dustin: do you take out if you have to use a subcontractor, for example, digging and sewer trench?
No, build it into your price.
There you go. Joey, question from Joey. So, if you pay 20% to the tech and pay hourly to the apprentice, how do you keep your labor at 20% or below?
Well, number one, your labor shouldn't be at 20%. It really should end up being at probably 23, 24. Some places it'd be 25, 26 with burden and everything, right? So that's number one. Number two, how are you set up where you're using a helper every time? If we're not talking about install, which is a totally different pay plan, if a service person's using a helper every day, this is a different structure. And you can potentially move down to 15 or whatever it looks like. Just make sure it pencils out. The key to all this, you run plumbing only, and we run 2 to a truck. Well, I don't know why you need 2 people on a plumbing job overwhelmingly. In that situation, for like a plumber, I know I'm complicating things right now, but that plumber would pay for the helper directly out of their commission because I don't want to encourage them to use a helper on every job. You'd be surprised. It's like every water heater job is a 2-person job until they have to pay for it, and then none of them are.
Any members on this call, like Ray, if you reach out to Kelly at growwithclover.com, she'll send you over a playbook on this too.
Yep, 100%. Yeah.
All right. Is there a weekly goal to get to 20% from Sarah? Hey, Sarah, good to have you.
So is there a weekly goal to get to 20%? I'm not sure what that means. Sarah, unmute yourself real quick.
Sorry, I couldn't find the button. I was just wondering, like, okay, so like right now we have like a monthly goal for them to reach before, and then anything that they sell over a certain amount that they get a certain percent. So I was wondering, but I've heard a lot of other places talk about a weekly goal, like maybe $6,000 or something, where HVAC they have to do before they start getting any type of percentages.
Yeah, so I'm going to pay percentages as opposed to hourly, so it's not on top. So they get 20% no matter what. However, right, if they don't hit a certain dollar amount, they're not going to make a lot of money, which is exactly the point of a performance pay. If they're not performing, they don't get paid very much. Now, that being said, you do need to have both daily, weekly, and monthly goals and input goals too, right? Like if revenue goal is your only goal, you're missing the point a little bit because it's hard for them to adjust revenue goal, but it's not hard for them to increase average ticket, right? Or accessory upsells or leads, right? Which means flips, right? So you need to break it down to details, like, and we can give you some of that information just set up on a call, right? But yeah, you absolutely need daily,
Sarah,
weekly, and monthly goals,
Sarah,
regardless of how you pay them.
Sarah, you're a member too, so just reach out to Kelly for that, and we'll send you over the playbook.
Yep.
Perfect. Thank you.
Totally, my pleasure. Good to see you here.
Yeah.
Josh, so Josh has been asking, Josh, I don't mean to ignore you. A team member of mine told me I've ignored your question twice, and I did not mean that. So this is Josh's question. Giving them 20%, do you hold them accountable to a daily, weekly revenue goal?
Of course. How you pay doesn't affect the back end. Like if you have people on hourly that don't have a goal, you're screwing up, right? On pay performance, it's no different, right? You have to have goals for every single one of your team members individually and as the team as a whole. Otherwise, you're not going to drive them, right? And we can get more complicated with this, and we can put together bonus structures for hitting team goals or hitting the average ticket or combo revenue, which we all need to be tracking, right? Yes, and Mike, you still have to track hours, but you're not paying hours for the most part. You do have to pay overtime still, and it depends on each state. So we actually have Ian on here. If Ian, drop your email in the chat. He's kind of the HR guru of the industry. If you want to know details about how you have to pay it's really just overtime, but how you have to pay overtime in your state, he'd probably be able to help you out.
More than that in California.
Yeah, California is a nightmare. You get 8 hours every single day, so you could work 16 hours and still have overtime. So it's complicated. And to be clear, all of this, just so we're on the same page, regardless of the pay per performance, you have an hourly rate with your team because you still have to pay them an hourly rate for meetings, for when their truck breaks down, for training, things like that. So you still have a negotiated hourly rate, which is just the hourly rate you currently pay usually. It's nothing above and beyond, but you're going to rarely pay it. Does that make sense?
All right. So we have a question. Hopefully that was helpful. For any non-members who hear me speaking about playbooks, you can book that discovery call, and I'm happy to discuss that.
Yeah.
Austin, put that link in the chat, please, for people. There's people asking.
It's just
here
Kelly@growwithclover.com, Joey. But Kelly will type it in.
Oh, can we get Kelly's email? Yeah. Yep,
Yeah.
of course. So that's like the link for those who are not members and don't have access to those playbooks. Okay, so great. Question from Randy. Randy, I think I've been ignoring you too, and again, totally unintentional. Randy, when do you do this test? If you do it during the busy season, they don't trust what happens in the slow season.
So a simple answer, the ideal time to do it is like February and March. Because you're going to run into that preseason, but you're going to be busy with tune-ups, like your tune-ups, right? And then you're going to run into the busy season. But honestly, like you'd be surprised if you roll out this pay plan and do the math beforehand just to make sure they're making more money. You could do it any time of the year, but the ideal time of the year is 2 months before your busy season. That way they see both sides of it. And you think they would like, hey, this is the middle of summer, of course they make more money. They don't really think like that, if we're really being honest. They just see the paychecks and they get really excited. And just so we're all on the same page, if they make more money on hourly than pay per performance, what does that tell you? It means you're not making money off them. It means they're not a good investment for you. Period. Like, so just be aware, if it's not penciling out, it's because we have a bigger problem. And if it's not penciling out with one guy, it's like, okay, well, this guy needs help and training. If it's not penciling with all of them, it's like, oh shit, we need to really adjust what we're doing and how we're training them and how we're getting them, driving them and getting them to talk about accessories and upsells and all that fun stuff. Does that make sense?
So we have, hopefully that was helpful, guys. We have a question from Mario, and then Josh, let's pivot over to training. There's people here that are looking to learn about that too.
Well, do we want to talk about, salespeople, CSRs, all the fun stuff too, accounting?
Yes.
Or should we just?
No, I think so. I think people don't even think to incentivize them from a performance pay plan. Let's do that. One question though: are you tracking hours for Maria? From Mario, sorry.
Yeah, you still have to track hours because of you still have to pay overtime. Outside of that, you don't pay hours, so it's not. You still got to track it, but it's fairly simple. It's not complicated, but you still legally have to track hours. Number one, to make sure you're paying above minimum wage, which you better be, right? Number two, just for if they work 50 hours in a week, and it's different state to state, but in general, if they work 50 hours a week, 10 of those have to be time and a half, meaning if on pay performance, after you do all the math, they made $50 an hour, on those 10 hours, they made 75. So it's a little bit complicated, which is part of the reason that your labor rate will be above 20%, but it shouldn't be significantly above 20%. And by the way, for anybody on this call is like, oh, my labor rate's 18%. For a service team, if I'm telling you quite plainly, if you're paying 18%, you might be excited about that. I'm telling you right now, you don't have the best technicians. And you're going to struggle to keep really great technicians, and you're going to struggle to recruit great technicians. That's not a good thing, right? There's a war on technicians, and whoever wins the war wins the business, which means you have to pay them effectively.
Mhm.
Don't
you're-
underpay your team members, right? I'd rather put something in front of them where we all win, as opposed to taking something from them.
Agreed.
Okay.
If that's where you're at, a book that called "Don't Stay Stuck There." There's no need for that.
So let me
Sean, go ahead, Josh.
let me briefly go into selling, and then CSRs, and then everyone else. So selling, by the way, this is not just for HVAC install, but I think anything with selling where they're selling the job, but someone else is doing the install. So this could be water heaters, this could be dig jobs, this could certainly be HVAC systems, this could be duct cleaning, this could be garage doors, whatever it is, where an install crew is coming out. I'm not going to pay 20% in that situation. Reason is I got to pay someone to actually install it. Pretty common sense, right? So generally, I'm going to pay 10%, and that 10%. A lot of people base what they pay off the gross margin. Once again, they don't know how much money they're making, and you're not going to motivate them as nearly as effectively if you don't do it that way. So pay 10%, but off of book price, which is guaranteed gross margin, right? If there's issues, you can follow up, you can fix them, but pay them off of book price, and then do a sliding scale based off discounts. So if they discount, a single dollar, they don't get 10%. They get 8%. 5% and above, so they discount 5.5%, then they get 7%, 6%, 5%. We can kind of share that information with you. Super clean, super easy, but it's much better to pay on book price as opposed to gross margin because they don't know how much they're getting paid. It's not clear. And ultimately, if they spec the job right, it's not their fault. If they didn't spec the job right, we could train and work our way around this. Does that make sense? And salespeople, let's be honest, like they're money driven. I want to put that dollar amount in front of them and get them excited. We'll even do a 1% rider most of the time, meaning like if you hit your revenue goal, your average ticket goal, your accessory sale goal, if you hit all three of those things, I'll give you 1% addition on every single install you did for the month. So they could make 11% potentially on some systems. So
Okay.
what? Go ahead.
We have a plumbing question, so let's get that answered, and then yes, let's pivot over to different positions real quick on plumbing. How do you account? Plumbing question from Sean. How do you account if the tech sells the job and then as an install team complete the job?
I just described that.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Sorry. My bad.
No,
I'm
but
reading.
George,
Go ahead.
no, but George does have a question. He said, so on slow
Okay.
days when they're at the shop, do you pay hourly? And on service, it is pay for performance? Question mark.
Yes. Thank you.
On services pay performance, every department is pay performance to a point. But any field staff for sure, it's pure pay performance. And I'm not sure what you mean slow days when they're at the shop. Like if they're just hanging out in the shop and not doing any work, I pay them nothing. But if you're having them in and you're doing truck inventory, or you decide, hey, I'm going to clean pay my guys to clean the yard because I just want to keep them busy, then yeah, you use your hourly rate. And by the way, for warranty calls, other stuff, you still have an hourly rate. Honestly, guys, if you want like super details on this, we can get super details. Just schedule a call, hop on a call with myself or Laura, and like we'll go through it step by step. Like we could go into the weeds as much as humanly possible.
That link will direct you to our calendars, and it's in the chat. So Josh, let's talk about other positions, CSRs, etc.
So CSRs, a lot of people pay CSRs pure hourly. I don't pay a pure pay performance for CSRs. They're going to have an hourly plus spiff. Understand that all of this we're not just doing because it motivates them to do what we're asking, which it does, but it's also a recruiting tool. The truth is, I want a CSR, and the moment I have one, it changes everything. That makes $100 grand a year. Now, there's no amount of hours you could work to get a CSR to make $100 grand a year. It's not going to make sense, but it's way less than you think it is. To make $100 grand a year, they have to sell 2 maintenance agreements an hour, which, by the way, triples their pay. I pay $15 for selling a new maintenance agreement, right? It's perpetual. It's a one-time cost for me. I would gladly do that. Or turning one call into 2. So they called in for AC, and I'm going to turn them into plumbing. We're going to do both calls, right? So you need to build a pay performance for a CSR, because you're never going to get the best CSRs paying $15 an hour. But if I give them a path where they can make $50, $60, $70 an hour by performing, then all of a sudden the quality of candidates I'm going to get, the conversations I'm going to get, and the productivity from that CSR is going to be significantly different. The goal is not only to have 100,000 CSR, but not for your call center. Everyone thinks a call center is a cost. It doesn't have to be. Call center can literally be revenue producing and produce millions of dollars of revenue, of actual profit, just by collecting money over the phone. So make sure you're selling over the phone. Make sure they're incentivized by that too. If you want details on that, hop on a call and we'll walk through not only how to track it, what the spiff structure will look like, how to recruit people that actually want to do that, right? How to build the energy in the room to make sure they're actually doing it. Because what you don't want is just, a good call center is exciting, it's fun, and they can make a lot of money for just answering the phone and calling out, but only when you also make a lot of money. Pretty common sense stuff. Now, from the other side, right, most other positions, the accountant is not a pay-per performance purely model, right? But every single team member, without exception, should have a bonus structure based off of what you want them to do. So accounting is a good example, right? That's a cost saving. For every $100 they save me in above and beyond savings, they came up with it out of thin air. Am I willing to pay them 10%? Hell yes. It's not permanent for the rest of their life, 10%, but they save me $10,000 every single year. Awesome. I will give them a $1,000 bonus. Why not? It motivates them to do it and costs you nothing, right? A dispatcher, right? So many people pay dispatchers just hourly, but a dispatcher has a direct reflect on how many calls you run, the right tech, right call, and eliminating drive time, right? Are they playing that human Tetris effectively? I could give a daily bonus for hitting the revenue goals. I'll give a larger monthly bonus when we are effectively hitting revenue goals, right? Does this make sense? Every single team member, without exception, should have a bonus plan based off the success. If you want to be a company that really gets the best people, we have to all be rowing the same direction. And when we win, everybody needs to win. By the way, if I'm doing this properly, they rely on those bonuses. They get really good at dispatching, right? And they're getting bonuses, 7 days out of 10. It no longer becomes a bonus in their mind. It becomes part of their pay. So they'll start spending it before they have it, which means they need to get that bonus, which is good for you, right? We talk about this all the time. It's kind of a dick comment, but it's just the truth, right? Like I want that technician, that comfort consultant, that CSR to buy that house, to buy that vacation home, to buy that boat, to buy their dream car. Not only because I want to help them accomplish things that they couldn't do without me, but the truth is they don't pay cash for that boat, do they? They got a payment. And when they have a payment, they have to make money. And the way to make money is to deliver. Go ahead, Ian. You got a question?
Yeah. So I just wanted to chime in here. Almost every dollar bonus add-on that you've mentioned, everybody needs to remember those spiffs and bonuses are all directly tied into their non-discretionary wage, and you have to calculate the overtime on it. So when you're going through your budgets, make sure you're accounting for how many overtime hours your team normally works and work from there backwards to make sure you're compliant and functional.
Right. The key to this, guys, is like you could run any pay plan, you could do any marketing plan, you could do any training system, you could do anything in the world you want, actually, as long as you include it in your pricing. You just have to build it into your pricing. It's non-negotiable. So just, hey, if I can't pay 20%, that tells me you're underpriced. Or we have some serious structural issues, but most of the time it's you're underpriced. Does that make sense?
I have a question from Peace Pay Plan. So this is Sean asked this. Peace Pay Plan for HVAC install for 2-man install crews. Sean, do you mind unmuting yourself and clarifying your question there? We're happy to answer it.
I think I understand it, but
okay, go ahead. If you understand it, that's
I'm
even
muted.
better.
Go for it, Sean. Just in case.
Yeah, Josh, if you know how we run. We have 2-man crews. So if we do a piece play on performance, how do you suggest you include both guys?
Most people have 2-man crews, right? So that's not uncommon. Some people have 3, but that's usually a mistake. You can get down to 2. 3 is just because you haven't systemized your installs. And this isn't just for HVAC. This is for plumbing and dig jobs and garage doors and all of it, right? 2-man crews is all you need. And you're generally going to have a lead and a helper, right? So piece rate is different than the technician because they're not selling anything. Some people do like a flat percentage of the install. Not a fan. The reason is they had no effect on what that installs was sold at, right? It didn't motivate them or change them at all. So you're not actually driving them to what would matter, right? For an installer, what I'm really looking for is, speed and quality and the customer experience, but speed and quality is what I'm trying to do. I'm not trying to get them to, present options to a customer. I love it when they do, but it's a hard battle to win, right? They're installers for a reason usually. So what I'm going to do is a pay performance, meaning like if I'm talking about here in Phoenix and we're doing a split system, right? I know a split system, a horizontal split system, it's going to take, 5 to 6 hours to do the install with 2 people. And it's going to include all these things and all the details. And that's up to you for your individual. Right? But you are. I agree. There we go. So it's a 5 or 6 hour install, right? And you know how much you pay your lead installers and how much you pay an hourly, right? Roughly average, and I tend to lean towards the high just to make them happy, right? But let's say for easy math, you pay your lead installers 30, you pay your helpers 15. It's normally a 5 or 6 hour job. I'm going to lean a little heavy and say, hey, I'm going to pay them 7 hours for this job, regardless of how long it takes. So if they finish that in 5 hours, that lead who makes $30 an hour at 7, he's made $210. It's a pretty good deal. He's actually made way more on hourly wage because he finished it early. But if that install takes 10 hours, I'm going to pay him $210. If he has to go back and fix his mistake, I'm going to pay him $210. So what I'm doing is I'm going to find out how long it should take, and I'm going to actually give him a little bit more because I want to protect him and not piss him off and make this an easy win where they're making more. And like installers think differently than a service tech. You ask a service tech, they don't tell you how much they make an hour usually. They tell you how much they make a year. Installers tend to focus on how much they make an hour. So if they can finish it in 5 hours, that $30 became 45 or 40, right? So it excites them more and they get to go home earlier. And the goal is to eliminate your risk on the back end. But let's say a package unit, I could get 2 of those done in a day if I'm really efficient, right? A split system, some companies could do 2 a day because they could get that done. They could get their guys to do it 4.5 hours and run straight to another one, which means I get to do twice as much revenue off the install crew. Not every day, but when the right systems are lined up, right? So that's how I pay piece rate. It's fairly simple, and I know Sean, you're a member, so reach out to Kelly, and we'll get you all the details on that too.
All right, thank you.
No
Totally.
worries.
We have a good training video on that too, Kelly. So let's make sure he gets that as well, along with the
Yeah.
playbooks.
Phil asked real quick, how do you
Yeah.
track if sold 2 calls from 1? It's pretty simple. Did they call in for HVAC? Yes. Did we also set a plumbing call? Yes. So we generated 2 calls. How do you track that? You could track it in your CRM usually, or your field management system. It's fairly simple to do that. They have systems already in place. If yours doesn't, then we just track manually and confirm. But I mean, I would even pay, like, if they called in for a service call and we found that was a 12-year-old system, let's send out a comfort consultant instead. I'd pay for that. No questions, right? You make the assumption that the service tech would turn that into an install anyway, but you don't know that. I'd rather bird in hand, right?
Yeah,
Does that help, Phil?
Yeah, I guess what I'm getting at, somebody calls in for a service call, no cool call, and then the guy also turns it into air conditioning clean and check. How do we know the customer just didn't call for the AC clean and check to begin with?
I mean, so there's an honesty piece of this, right? Where number one, you would listen to calls, right? Randomly. Not every single call do you need to listen to, but a certain percentage of the calls you listen to and verify to make sure people are being honest and fair. But I mean, really, if you think your CSRs, that would be a problem. That tells me we have the wrong CSR.
Yeah, agreed. How much are you paying them spiff on that stuff?
So it depends what they're doing, right? So if I'm gonna do a additional call, like, so additional service, so like I'll pay $15 to $20 for setting a plumbing or AC lead back and forth. If I'm adding a tune-up, right, I'm gonna pay generally $12 to $15 for adding a tune-up to a repair, which is a great pitch, by the way. It's super easy to sell tune-ups, increase your average ticket by 79, 89, 99, whatever your tune-up price is. Kelly, make sure to reach out to Phil and just give him the "oh, by the way" script on how to sell tune-ups on repairs. It's super cake. But yeah, $12 to $15 for that. It all depends what kind it is. I'll pay $25 for taking that service call into a install sales call instead, right?
Okay.
For any non-members here who feel like they're being hard done by for not getting these playbooks, I do hope that this was very, very valuable in and of itself. But if you want that additional, like, step-by-step, book the call and we can talk about that too. There are a few slots left. Austin, thank you for updating them there. They're filling up, but there are some spots. We can talk about that. Any members who want the playbooks that we spoke about today, email Kelly and she'll make sure to get them to you, along with the training videos. Josh, we're coming up on time, so I'm mindful of balancing your desire to also cover training. We're probably not going to get into all of it. Cover what you feel like is the most important, and let's give. I know that there was 3 main training pieces you wanted to cover. Whatever you think is the most actionable and also accomplishable within the short time we have left, go ahead and cover that.
Yeah.
Unless there's somebody with a pressing question and they want to ask it, by all means, guys, go ahead and ask that.
Yeah, I mean, I want to be goofy here, and I know everybody wants to know about training, but training is like a complicated process, and like we have a really solid playbook on it. And I'm not sure we could cover it in 15 minutes, but I'll give you the quick hits, right? So there's really 4 major components to a good training program. Number one is having a really solid ride-along program. Ride-alongs are the most effective way to train people, because it's the only time you could actually force them to actually do it. Hey, on this next call, here's what you're going to do. And you could actually build habit more than anything else. Now, when you do a ride-along program, reach out to us. We'll give you some details on how exactly to do it, because there's definitely a right and a wrong way to do it, and how often, all that. We'll give you all those details. I don't want to go into that because we'll run out of time. But make sure when you do a ride-along program, it's systematic. You have a goal for each person. You have a follow-up process, and you're physically holding them accountable. And not, this is such a big mistake, you're not hopping in and saving the call. You're letting them succeed or fail on their own, and then you're giving feedback and helping them do it on the next call, right? It's so hard to let a sales opportunity go when you know it's slipping and I can use this one phrase and I can bring it back around. You have to let it go because you can save that one call, but the goal is to save that one call every time with that, comfort consultant after that fact, which is not an easy thing to do, right? You're there to watch, to give feedback afterwards, and really to carry the tools and be their helper, right? Not to be that communication process with the customer. The second thing you need to do is you need to have really solid meetings. Most people do training meetings, but it's like we walk up to the front room and it's like, what are we going to talk about today? Right? Bullshit. No major organization would ever do that. Can you imagine like a football or basketball coach going to the team and being like, hey, what do we want to work on today, guys? Like, what's pressing? What are we not good at right now? Like, that would never happen. Never, ever, ever. Don't do it with your business. Plan them, set them up properly, record them, follow up with them, create goals, track whether they were successful or not. There's a whole system to this. Once again, reach out. We'll help you. We'll give you this information. But you need organized meetings, right? Number 3, you need an accessory program. So what I mean by accessory program is so many contractors make the gigantic mistake of like, hey, this month we're going to sell this, and this. Bullshit. You give them 5 things to focus on, they'll focus on none of them. So the key to an accessory program is to hyper focus on one thing every single month and change it every single month so they get used to it. It becomes a cadence and they become excited about it, right? And if I'm talking about, as an example, duct cleaning for a month or an air scrubber or water heaters or whatever it is, I could really get them to talk about it. I could build an incentive program for them. I could put together an offer for the customer. I could do marketing for it. I could give them one sheets. I could create a contest to get them really excited. And for 1 month, I could actually get them to sell that one thing. And after that month, some of them, not all of them, will sell that the rest of their career. I'm trying to add more tools in the toolbox. And if I do 5 at once, I'll never have success with it. I need to hyper focus on one and really actually make a difference in drive. Does that make sense to everybody? The last piece of it, and this is a huge mistake that almost every contractor makes, is they build a sales system, they build a training program, they build a marketing program, and it's not scalable. It's complicated, it's difficult, it's hard to follow. Like a good example of this is like, hey, I have this 5-minute perfect way to sell air scrubbers. I got this 3-minute presentation, it's blowing my mind step by step. It's amazing on how set system leads. And I got this 4-minute process about, how you can buy a filter or be a filter, right? And we're talking about air filtration. And I got this 4-minute thing about tankless water heaters. And each one of them in their own right are like the perfect system. It's ideal. It's everything you would want to be and would work 100% of the time. Not 100% of the time. It worked the vast majority of the time if it was delivered right. But a technician will never do that. You can't expect them to know 20 different sales processes. It's not scalable. You need to simplify your training, your accessory program, and your sales process so they could do it over and over and over again and have a lot of success. So I'll spend the last few minutes just talking about this sales process specifically, and the number one in the industry right now. It was actually created Parker, but now, by the way, just so we're on the same page, everything we talked about today, if you were to talk, to the top 200 AC, plumbing, electrical, roofing companies in the United States, they all do all of this shit without exception. No $100 million business pays hourly to their technician. Does not happen. Doesn't exist. Can't do it. Maybe on the commercial side, I'm talking specifically on the residential side. Doesn't exist. Right? So just keep in mind, if you really want to grow and scale, and you don't have to be $100 million for this to make a ton of sense. It makes sense at any size. Anyway, scalable, repeatable sales system. I noticed most of why. This is it's just that basic. I know that sounds really basic because it is really basic. The key to it is I'm going to use I noticed most of why, and I'm going to explain here in a sec, to sell any accessory, any upsell. It isn't necessarily for repairs, but it's for any additional sell. So I'll walk you through it. I'm going to walk you through in about 2 minutes. And in these 2 minutes, you'll not only be able to fully understand it, but you'll actually be able to train it because it's scalable and simple. I noticed is a passive way to bring something up. Most of is a way to drop social proof and drop one value point. Why is an open-ended question to get them to say an objection. And I assume they say an objection regardless of what the why is. Most of the time, it's either a price objection or it's a knowledge objection. No one ever told me about it. So let me give it to you in a specific example. I noticed your AC system is over 10 years old. Most of our customers consider replacing when it gets to this age just because it saves them so much money and they don't have to stress about it breaking down. Can I ask why you haven't replaced your AC system yet? You get me? Simple, clean, scalable. I notice you don't have an air scrubber. Most of our customers have an air scrubber. Just because it cleans the air they breathe, it's actually, you know, the number one filter in your home is your AC system. It filters 40% of the air in your home. The number two filter in your home, your lungs. You filter about 20% every single day. You can either buy a filter or be a filter. That's why you don't have an air scrubber. I notice you don't have a maintenance agreement problem. Most of our customers have a maintenance. The key to this is if I train this effectively, I don't need a technician to think about it. It's simple. It's clean. They know what it is. And now they only have to know one value point. And I ask every technician to tackle one objection. After that, I ask them to move on because they're not salespeople. I don't want them to be salespeople. I want them to be thorough and bring up options. This is a passive, non-aggressive way for a technician to bring up option without them having to think about that 4-minute perfect pitch. Does this make sense? Does anybody have questions, thoughts, ideas on that?
So you're not really reading the personality from the customer. It's because you kind of have it on the scalable thing. You don't care if it's a D, an I, an S, or a C, because you can just, is that what you're kind of saying here? You can use that on all personalities?
So here's what I would say, Cody. Comfort consultant or a salesperson, I want them to have a sophisticated, effective sales system. Have you ever known a technician to be really great at that? And certainly
No.
all of your technicians.
No way. Yeah.
So don't ask them to do something that they're going to fail at.
Okay. Perfect.
So
Thank you.
simplify, right? Yeah. And by the way, it doesn't matter what their personality on that specific sales system, right? I just noticed it. And I said,
Yeah.
well, okay, yeah, I put in a filter system and go, oh, okay. And now that's an objection, right? So I could do that myself. And he said, well, you can, but why wouldn't you want just taken care of today? I could take care of it today. Well, it sounds expensive. Actually, it's probably a lot less than you think it is. For most customers, it's as low as $2 to $3 a day to replace a new system or whatever we're talking about, right?
Yeah. Well, and in HVAC, they'll basically get paid back because of energy efficiency. So I'm in garage doors, but same concepts. I got you.
Same thing. But yeah, it's the exact same thing. It's no different and it's scalable.
What
They don't have to think.
What I'll do for folk who have booked that success call, and there's a fair few of you, I'll give one playbook. I'll give one playbook to you all. And Cody, if for you, that would be I notice most of why. I'm happy to give that to you. We can't give a whole host of them. We have to respect our members, but I certainly will give that. I'll give one playbook to those folks. So Cody, I don't know, have you booked a call? But if you have, I'm happy to give that to you.
Let's just be generous, and everybody on the call, everyone has showed up. I made that video of how to roll out. I noticed most of why specifically to your technicians. Let's just share that.
It's actually not it's even better. It's actually a mini course.
That's a mini course.
That you filmed.
Let's do that. Let's give everybody the mini course.
I'll send you the course. Yeah, pretty sure I have it.
Okay. Kyle, you probably have it, but you're welcome to reach out and we can give it to you again.
Yeah.
George,
we only have a few more minutes here, so anybody who hasn't, just make sure you have notes. If you're a member, reach out to Kelly. If you're not a member, please book that call. Use that link. We'll give you way more details on how to actually roll it out.
I'll put the link in there. I'll put the link in there once more. I think if there's no spots, I apologize, but there should be some more spots, guys. let's see, just click the link and it'll open up any availability that's there. Guys, I appreciate you very much. The game here is to listen to what's going on in the industry, things that you guys are struggling with, and come on and add a whole host of value. Again, if you want to take that to even the next level, book that discovery call. We can speak about not just what your impending issues are and give you solutions to solve those, but we can also speak about how you can begin to work with Clover and level up your business even more. There's people on this call that are enjoying that journey, and we'd be happy to welcome you aboard if the fit is good between us both. So we will see you on that call. Until next time, guys, reach out if you have additional issues or if you have information on what you want us to cover on the next call. We're excited to add value to you, and thank you for taking the time today. Any parting questions, guys? We have like 2 minutes or so. You can pop them into the chat, but if not, I will see many of you on the call, and I look forward to us being able to add some actionables to your business, to your growth, to your bottom line.
I like how Brett always sits as far as humanly possible from the camera. He just left on DNH. I don't know why that is. Anyway, yeah. Anybody have questions? We're good to go.
Someone asked me what can they expect on the call. So basically on the call, what we'll do is, and you'll see it in the chat, we'll cover your main issue. I'll give you action steps to solve that issue, and then a playbook that you can directly go away and incorporate. Then we can talk about what working with us looks like. You can kick off your 7-day trial. We give everybody who starts working with us a 7-day trial so they can experience us fully and see the value that the solutions can bring to your organization. And that would just be a minor part of the call. But that's what we cover on the call: solutions to your biggest issues, give you those playbooks, and then if you want to work with us, we can introduce that 7-day trial to you. But most importantly, let's get whatever's holding you back solved, mitigated, out of the way so you can keep driving.